Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News. Chewy, good evening, sir.
Hello. How's everything
Hello.
with you?
Hello. I'm in one of those situations where I want to go, oh, geez, I'm exhausted this week and I'm looking forward to the weekend off. But you've just had COVID, so I don't feel like I can't play the I'm exhausted card because you've just had COVID and you're back at work. So how are you feeling?
It is something else, man. I hit 3 o'clock. The energy levels hit the floor. It's been rough. I've just been like nodding out on the couch trying to watch something, and it's oh shit, it's 10 o'clock. Better jump on.
Oh, gotta have to talk to that asshole again. It's 10 o'clock. Jeez.
It just never fucking ends. Never ends.
Have you talked to your boss about it? Like, could there be a possibility, like talking to Dr. Anna last night, talking about looking after yourself, is there a chance that for, let's say, the next 2 weeks, you could say to your boss, can I finish at 3? Like, could you propose that?
No, probably not. We run pretty light on staff, and like people were doing 6-day weeks to cover me being off. So
right.
I'm not coming back and saying, hey, still want to slack off a little bit. We did have a very interesting chat, though, about the whole 7 days.
Yeah.
Or 10 before you return to work. He made the interesting point, and I would have liked to put this to Dr. Anna, that you are usually infectious for a couple of days before you have symptoms. So would that be the 10 days from infection to being clear?
You know, I don't think that's the case, because I think that the science now says pretty clearly that you're infectious when you test positive on the rat. So if you are not testing, and you don't typically take a rat until you have symptoms, because you're like, oh, what the fuck is this? And you take a rat. Yeah. So that was, I think, the original strains. I could probably go and find it, but there was a piece on 7 Sharp with Susie Wiles where they explained all that very clearly. And it said I always want to couch this by saying the word mostly, because you know, I'm not a huge fan of labels, and I'm not a huge fan of absolutes. Yeah. But my understanding is basically you aren't infectious until you test on a rat.
Okay.
So yeah, that wouldn't be the case necessarily. Was that your boss asking you that? Like, was that your boss kind of going, oh no,
because it's just something
we our workers to come back? And
no, it's just something that we were talking about. I mean, it stands to make the point that there has been so much shifting of advice and moving of the goalposts that it's really hard for people to go, this is the best information, because we've gone from here's a hell of a lot of information from medical experts and Ashley Bloomfield and all of that sort of stuff to essentially nothing. And it might be quite different a procedure or a different advice compared to what we may have heard in the past.
Yeah. I think it's the idea that this is, we're at a point now where we've got to look after ourselves. And, you know, it's even the vaccine. Yeah. The vaccine at the start was a good protectant against the original COVID. And as we know, once it turned to Delta, once it became Omicron, once it went through Omicron, basically it became less and less and less effective at stopping you catching it or stopping you transmit it. But what it did do was keep you out of hospital. So it increased the chances of staying out of hospital. So even the vaccine started off being, let's do it for your gran and papa. And now it's do it for yourself. So it's like, not only has the actual medicine turned into let's do it for yourself, but I think that's what we've got to do in society, which is why, you know, I think about, like, sometimes people criticize me for wearing this kind of mask. Not a lot. You see, it's got the valve in it.
Yeah.
Because some of the ones with valves means they protect the person wearing it, but not everybody else. And I'm like, I said to someone once, well, but you're not wearing a mask at all. So what's happening here is you're not looking after yourself or anybody else, and I'm choosing to look after myself. What's the complaint? So I think they're just trying to be, start a fight sort of thing. But it feels like, I mean, I do think that we want to. I still try and take the philosophy and attitude of looking after other people, but I think we're in a situation now where really we are all individuals. We're all individuals, and we need to look after ourselves. And so, yeah, I think one of the privileges we've had, you're probably involved with this, Chewy, as well, is we've had people like Michael Planck, people like Anna Brooks, people like David Welsh giving us, as I've always said, either the advice from the lab or from the latest academic findings, and haven't actually had to listen to what the government's been saying at any stage. So that's where I've tended to do it. And hopefully there's been some people out there who have watched or have been a part of what we're doing, who have also got, and when I say their information from us, I'm always very, very careful, not from me and not from you, Chewy, respectfully, but from the Anna Brookses of the world. And they've been actually, getting them from them to help their decision making out. And last night's conversation, I've put up like 4 clips today if people want to go and have a look on the YouTube channel. And that thing about testing positive, I'm just like, it makes, I mean, it just, if you're testing positive, you are positive and infectious. I'm like, it's just, it changes the game, and that's when, and it's so sad to me that at the start it was all about the health, and now it feels like it's all about the politics. And so therefore, at the start, New Zealand was a world leader, and we were able to live a life that no one else in the world could, pretty much. And now we're just like everybody else because politics has come to the forefront. But that's why, like, as much that happens in the world, you've got to look after yourself.
Absolutely. On the topic of being incredibly selfish, it's Guy Fawkes weekend.
Yeah. What do you think of that?
I hate it. I fucking hate it. It's bad for pets. It's commemorating the most fucking stupid thing.
A terrorist act, or attempted terrorist act.
An attempted terrorist act that was a beat up anyway, that happened hundreds of years ago in a completely different country. And what was it? It was a massive beat up on the Catholics or the Protestants or something stupid.
Yeah, he was trying to blow up Parliament. I can't quite remember.
And we commemorate this by buying cheap, shitty Chinese fireworks, scaring the shit out of our pets, and usually setting them off before it's even dark because we're all idiots.
Because we live in the Southern Hemisphere.
Can we get rid of it? I'm just so sick of it.
See, this is your authoritarian side coming out again, Chewy.
Yes, it is.
Whereas I'm much more libertarian. I'm just like, whatever works, guys. I don't disagree with you.
One state-sponsored firework that we can all gather around. It goes off once and then we can go home. Like that awesome, have you seen that awesome internet video? I think it was from over in the States where they had this intense, like 20-minute fireworks, all computer programmed light show that everyone was, and someone hit the wrong button and they all went off at once.
Yeah.
It is the most epic thing. We can do that. We just push a barge out into the harbour and blow it up, and then that's it, done. No more fireworks.
I remember as a kid, I used to live basically right next door to my primary school, and every Guy Fawkes there'd be a display, a bonfire. People would make their guys and throw them on the bonfire, and it would be a real community event. And all the dads of the primary school kids would get around and let off all the fireworks, and it was awesome. It was great fun. It was a huge thing. My kids, I haven't done fireworks with my kids. I can remember doing it when I lived in West Auckland, and I've been in Dunedin for approaching a decade now. So I probably haven't really done it for 10 or 12 years. And for me, it's like, meh. I'm not really strongly anti it. I think it's become so watered down now, it's kind of a waste of time. I mean, without thunderbolts and double happies and decent skyrockets, what's the point? That everyone's just blowing off Roman candles and being excited by it. But I don't know. I think if we started using the the metric of it's a thing from a long time ago and it doesn't really relate to us in 2022, then there's probably quite a few celebrations we'd be getting rid of as well.
Well, as I roll out a list, let's start with Easter. Yeah, no, I'm getting too close to the ACT party line now of no public holidays, and you just have some extra time off that you can use whenever you want, which is great as long as you don't have any fucking friends, which fits the ACT party quite well, I think.
Yeah, there you go. Now you finally nailed them down. I was going to say I saw a very funny, obviously tongue-in-cheek comment on Facebook. It was about that, the joking around about our political compasses.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And a guy called Will says, Chewy is a tyrant who sees no point talking unless there's an outcome he wants. Good to see Pat is more libertarian. Bring on the debate.
Where was this?
It was on YouTube. The YouTube comment. I thought it was fantastic. Obviously, playing on the joke that you're about, 1 millimeter different from me.
I definitely need that man's IP address. He's made my list. Look, if we're going to have pyromaniac festivals from overseas, why don't we have the one that they have? I think it's in Finland or Sweden or somewhere. The Christmas goat. Have you seen that?
I know a little bit of it. Tell me though.
Yeah, so they built a big straw goat, like a massive festival goat, and that's the old thing that the whole town would get together and build that. What's happened more recently is the town divides itself, that half the town has to build it and defend it, and the other half of the town has to burn it down somehow. That sounds amazing. Why can't we do that?
I'm just thinking it's maybe not what I'm thinking about, but I also know there's a. Hang on a sec. I've just done a little bit of work here. Does that look probably about right?
Yes. And like when we're talking about the,
so it's like a massive game of capture the flag, but it's burned down the goat. That sounds amazing.
The Scandinavians, like I'm going to bring I know they don't like being called Scandinavians. I'm going to bring the Finns into this as well. They have another amazing festival which we should definitely adapt to here. And Finnish is such a weird language, but they just basically smash words together. But it's called drinking floating or something like that. And basically, in the middle of summer, they all get these pool floaties and homemade rafts and that sort of thing, and they absolutely pack themselves into lakes and rivers that there's no spare space. It's just completely covered in rafts and floaties, and they just spend the whole day drinking in the sun and floating down a river. And I'm like, yes, that's another one. Can we do that one, please?
That sounds like a festival. I was just thinking about it might be somewhere in Spain. I'm not going to be able to find it. I was just looking for it. There's another festival where there's a village. I'm maybe it's this one here. Is it a Greek village stages rocket war, and they just and they do a mock battle. Or maybe this is it. Is there a video? I'll have a look. I've got the volume turned down, and you do it at nighttime, and they couldn't be loaded. And all you can see at nighttime is like massive amounts of rockets firing, like skyrockets, not like,
what's happening from Ukraine.
Not what's happening in Ukraine, yeah.
Right.
And I can just remember, I've got this picture in my head of like tiled roofs, just having hundreds, if not thousands, of rockets flying over from one side to the other. It's there's one here. Festival takes place over Easter. That probably sounds like it. Two church parishes fire thousands of handmade rockets at each other. The aim of the festival is to hit the other congregation's bell tower. People prepare for the event by securing their houses with metal boards. There you go.
I like that.
I'll see if I can find a video. Maybe we won't do any news stories on it. We'll just talk about fun festivals around the world.
We need to bring in. I will vote for any political party that brings these festivals in.
Right. It's called. It's cool. I'm not going to be able to pronounce it in the slightest. But here we go, dude. Here we go. Look at this madness.
Yes. Yeah, if we're going to have fireworks, let's have this for like maybe no reason.
This is the festival. Look at that.
Oh, that is good.
And you can see that they're definitely like down here. They're all kind of flying up this way, and these ones are all flying. There's the. I guess that must be the bell tower. How's that, eh?
That's pretty good.
So we've got to find someone to build a goat, and we're going to have to find our own supplies of skyrockets because they're illegal in New Zealand now, apparently. So there you go.
Why can I not find
Oh, look at it hitting the tower. That's so dope. Look at those. Imagine the next day. Imagine the cleanup. I'm sure they all go up onto the hill. Like there's probably 3 dads that do all the firing, and the rest of the villagers are just sitting up on the hill, just watching the spectacle. I would imagine. There you go. So I'm voting for that. Can I vote for that one?
You can.
Someone's also mentioned Burning Man in the text. Yeah, there's a
Burning Man's not bad. Probably, I was always just. I read an article once of like who are the worst group of people at Burning Man, and they were the ones that walked around with no pants on, but a shirt because they didn't want to get too sunburnt. People called them shirt cockers, and I'm not down. I'm not down with that one.
Not down with the shirt cockers.
Not down with the shirt cockers.
You surprised me, Joe. You surprised me.
I'm the authoritarian, remember?
Yeah, I was. Give them some more freedom.
Oh, here we go. I've finally found
all right
a decent image.
And then we might get onto something.
Which tab is it? So many tabs.
So little time.
And we want it on the proper screen because otherwise you get mad.
Don't go sideways. Our lot would end up banning everything, including matches, the following day. Nick says rockets are illegal to buy. Do some trading, maybe?
Look at that.
Wow.
The Finns know what's up. That whole river's jammed full of people just on floaties drinking.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. Here we go. Someone's on board for it. Down the water of the Leith, Chewy, says Peter.
That would either be a very slow, rocky float or an extremely quick one.
There's festivals, not festivals. There's events in Central Otago. There's like, when you roll those stones, what's that called on the ice? There's a stone.
Oh, curling.
Curling.
Fantastic sport.
And that there's events, I understand, in Central Otago that basically you have 24 hours notice that they're going to happen because they have to wait for the lake to be a certain amount of frozen. Maybe you could do the same thing with yours on the Leith. And for people who don't know, the Leith kind of runs through Dunedin and goes past the university and out to the harbour. Like the day after a big downpour. So there's just a bit more speed to it than usual because the Leith in Dunedin is quite impressive. Actually, it goes through the university. It goes through North Dunedin as well, where a lot of students live. And when you get a good downpour, it actually turns into rapids, and you get the kayakers who normally go up to Central to play in the rapids in the Leith, practicing their kayak skills. Like that's the water flow gets to that sensationally high. It's quite impressive actually. Here we go. More people hassling you, Chewy. I like when they hassle you. Easter and Christmas are over these things too. Just saying. Ro also says, as a kid, I love Guy Fawkes. Friends had a big party bonfire that works while I watch the fire. We stole the beer.
Yeah, that's excellent as well. Like I would have less problem with some sort of festival where it was just a big bonfire. Yeah, I think I have a problem with just handing out shit fireworks to idiots.
I'll tell you a story, right? We might have to go down to 1 or 2 stories tonight. I remember I worked in a Shell service station in Mission Bay in Auckland when I was a student, and there was a guy parked in a car on the side of the road, opposite the Shell service station, literally with the back of his car down, selling rockets out of his car, and they were like display rockets. I won't get it on the screen, but they'd be like the stick on them would have been 1 meter to a meter and a quarter long. Good solid stick rockets. And obviously the reason he was selling them was they were spectacular when they went, but they didn't explode, so they obviously had a fault in them. And I had a mate called Brad, and he had a flat in a part of Auckland that was fairly urban. There's a lot of people around, but we went to his house and we started firing some of them off during the day because they didn't explode. It was just as fun to fire them off during the day. I probably had about 15 or 20 of them. And I can remember this image where we fired a few up in the air and it was cool. And then we put one down on the ground to fire it. So it was flat on the ground. And it left a scorch mark where it took off that was maybe 2 meters long. So it was hanging it, you know. And then Brad said, let's do another one. So we put it down in the middle of the road, not a dead end or anything, just a normal road. And Brad went about 50, 100 meters down the road because he wanted to stand at the side of the road and watch it go past him. But what happened when we lit it, roads have a natural camber. And we just watched really carefully as this hugely powerful display rocket started to slowly work its way off to the right, just off to its right, just ever so slightly off to its right, kept going to its right. And we literally had a situation where Brad was running down the road like a cartoon with this rocket just sailing after him, trying to get him, sort of thing. And it was fantastic. And it was one of my favorite memories from being an idiot 19-year-old. Anyway,
that's 20 minutes on something that we didn't plan at all, and isn't in the thumbnail of the description. Fantastic.
So,
welcome to B8.
So when we write up that, I sometimes put a login for what's coming up. This will be called intro. Right. Let's talk about Sean Plunket and let's talk about David Farrier. I think what we need to do is take 2 steps backwards to go 1 step forward. When I say to try and work this out, I don't think we can work this out, but we've talked about this already, and I kind of want to give us an update as to where we're at. So back in the the 19th of October, Sean Plunket on his Twitter feed came out talking about a gutter snipe Kiwi filmmaker with a domestic protection order against him. And then very soon after that said, had David Farrier been to any court-ordered non-violence courses lately? Now, we did a piece on that. And because what happened after that, I'm not going to show all of it, but what happened after that, you can go to our YouTube feed and have a look, is that David Farrier came out and said that that was defamatory. And there was several commentators around New Zealand saying, I hope that Sean Plunket has some knowledge of this, because if he doesn't, it's a pretty defamatory statement. So what's happened recently is in the last week, so this is going to be, this is only 2 days ago, Sean Plunket's gone on about this again. There's been a documentary, which I haven't actually seen yet. I might try and watch it over the weekend, called Web of Chaos on TVNZ.
It's on my list for this weekend as well.
Apparently it's a little bit in the vein of Fire and Fury. It's about the disinformation people, etc. And the Disinformation Project is involved with it, as is David Farrier. I'm not entirely sure why, but Sean Plunket has, can I say a bee in his bonnet? I don't know what it is, but he I don't know whether David Farrier has ever wronged him. Now, when I say that, what I'm saying is Sean Plunket feels like he's been wronged. I don't care if he has or whatever, but what I'm saying is if Sean Plunket's ever needed to ask for David Farrier's manager, that's actually what I'm saying. Can I speak to your manager, please? And so now he's got some kind of vested interest in taking him down or bringing him down or abusing him, or kind of getting his mob, his alt-right QAnon right-wing mob, to pile on David Farrier by making these accusations. Because what happens is you make an accusation, the person that you make the accusation against says, what a load of horseshit, that's defamatory, and then there's a need to respond in general, which is actually, I retract or I double down. So Sean Plunket has doubled down. So let's have a look what was said this week on Sean Plunket's show about this whole situation when it comes to this documentary Web of Chaos, the involvement by David Farrier, and what I'm assuming Sean Plunket is saying is evidence. Now, I don't want to put it out there as evidence. I'm not saying it is. We're just commentating on the commentators and telling you what's happening between these two fairly high-profile New Zealand newsmakers and New Zealand news commentators. So this was from Sean Plunket's show a couple of days ago.
But I think TVNZ need to pull this documentary tonight, because in it they are going to represent Mr. David Farrier as some sort of authority on ethical journalism and the truth. And here is a truth about Mr. David Farrier. In late September of this year, so that's just last month, and a Wanganui judge issued under issued what's called a temporary protection order against a man who is very close to David Farrier and against David Farrier as what is called an associated respondents in a domestic protection order. The woman who sought this order went to a judge and said, this person who is related to me, this friend of David Farrier's, has, along with David Farrier, engaged in activities which have terrorized me.
Now, we're going to show you the protection order, the alleged protection order, but can I just say, my understanding and my reading of it is none of this information's in the protection order, right? None of what Sean Plunkett's saying now is in the protection order. Now, whether Sean Plunkett has other documentation or whether Sean Plunket has received this from the people who have written or applied for this protection order and they've told him the story, I don't know. But I'm going to show you this document that Sean Plunket is talking about, and none of this information as to why there is a protection order in place, none of it's stated in the document. So what Sean Plunket's saying now is, I don't know, potentially still defamatory. If it is indeed, I'm not sure. Remembering that to defame someone, it's a very high bar in New Zealand. And one of the things you need to be able to do is you need to be able to prove that the person willingly misinformed people. Like, that's why you'll hear me often say, it's my honest held belief. Because if it's my honest held belief, even if I'm wrong, it would be very hard for someone to convict me of defamation. So it's actually quite a high bar. So anyway, just to explain a little bit about the defamatory laws in New Zealand. The information that Sean Plunket's giving out now as to why there was this, I'm going to say alleged, but there is documentation protection order. None of the reasoning for that is in the protection order, just to put that out there.
Which have physically intimidated me, which have involved the breaking of laws, the entry into my home, the vandalism of my possessions, and me being terrorized by this relation of mine. And this has been done in cahoots with Mr. David Farrier, who is a self-styled journalist and filmmaker.
At least he got his name right.
The judge who heard their submissions was so concerned at what they heard and found the body of evidence they presented so disturbing that the judge immediately ordered, without Mr. Farrier or his associate,
Again, none of this is in the documentation that we can show you. Right, what Mr. Plunket is doing right now is saying what the judge was thinking. And look, I'm not actually saying that what Mr. Plunket's saying is incorrect. I'm just saying of the documentation that's been released, none of this stuff is in there. So whether there's more or other documentation, or whether this is what Sean Plunket's been told, this is from the information we have is not in there. That's what I'm trying to say.
Friend being present, issued a temporary protection order against him, and also an order that Mr. Farrier and his associate attend a non-violence program specified by the court. This is a very serious order, and it suggests that a judge felt there was an imminent risk and danger to the mental and physical well-being of this individual and her husband.
Again, none of that's in the documentation. It's an assertion. And I'm not actually explaining this to try and defend David Farrier, because we don't know, but I'm just being really clear that none of what he said there, when he said it suggests that, what that means is I conclude that. That's what that means.
Her husband is the subject of a movie by Mr. Farrier, and her husband and she would argue that movie, which is currently being flogged around and maybe played in cinemas in New Zealand, that movie should not be aired in New Zealand as under the protection order, it is harassment, targeted harassment against this woman and her husband.
Right. I think that's probably enough for it to get us going. So a couple of really important things in there. Now, we all, if we don't know, I haven't actually brought it up, True, but you can bring it up if you want, the Mr. Organ documentary that's coming out in the next wee while. Some really important parts about this information. Let me show you the and I'm only saying alleged and so-called, not because it's not real, but because I don't know the truth behind it. So this is the document that Mr. Plunket was talking about. And you can see that there's an associate respondent there, David Andrew Farrier of Auckland. You can see here that
I do want to point out something here we were briefly discussing the other night. That date, 7th of December 1971, heaps of people really focusing on the fact that that's perhaps the date of the document, which obviously predates David Farrier's birth.
Yeah, which
apparently that's not what it is.
Well, I don't know exactly what it is. I've had some people say that that's the date of birth of the complainant. But the thing is, it's
place to put it.
Oh yeah, I don't know. But what I do know is it's mentioning 2002 laws here. So obviously this is not a document from 1971 because it's talking about the Family Courts rule of 2002 there as well. I think I've seen another document as well that talks about a ruling from the year 2018 as well. So maybe there's actually a second document out there because I think I have seen a document that talks about the court ordered, whatever the correct term is, violence thing. So this is the document, obviously heavily redacted, and this is the document that they're talking about. Now, as you can see, none of the information that he was talking about when he says, making the assertions is actually in there, but there is a person there with David Farrier. It is a court order, it is a temporary protection order. All those things that he said is in that document. I'm comfortable assuming that's correct. Now, correct as in it's legit, like it's not a forgery. First thing, whether it is or isn't, this is the interesting thing to think about as well. Now, we are talking of the partner, according to Mr. Plunket, of Mr. Organ. We are talking about someone who is related to his partner. I'm assuming wife. I wrote down Mr. Organ's wife. I'm not sure if it said wife, but whatever.
Yeah, Mrs. Organ.
Mrs. Organ. Mrs. Organ, as reported by Sean Plunket just here, talked about, quote unquote, a relation of mine. So there is a family relation to do with Mrs. Organ, who is the main subject matter of this protection order. And as Sean Plunket just said, that the relation of mine in cahoots with David Farrier. Now, what that sounds like to me is this family member has been involved in the documentary that David Farrier has made. In other words, the family member is the protection order in cahoots with David Farrier, meaning David Farrier made a documentary and included the family member. Now that's what I hear. I don't know, but it is my honest hell belief that that the Mrs. Organ putting out information against David Farrier and whoever this family member is, and then at the end, Mr. Plunket saying that this film should not be shown in New Zealand feels a little dodgy when it comes to the idea of we don't want this film shown.
Now, I've had some thoughts on this.
Cool, go.
Like, obviously, Plunket's got a bit of history as being an investigative journalist.
I thought you were going to say an arsehole, but yeah, we're both right.
No, well, I mean, you can do both of those things. But you kind of say, well...
An investigative arsehole, is that what we're saying?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it can be many things. He's in flux. But you'd kind of assume that someone with his sort of history would do some research. But at first blush, it really looks like... So David Farrier's movie is about this guy called Mr. Organ, who's incredibly manipulative, narcissistic, really, really gets under people's skins, that sort of thing. And it looks, to me at least, that Sean has taken whatever Mr. Organ's offering up, hook, line, and fucking sinker, and is really trying to get this movie pulled and going after David Farrier. And of course, this that ties into the Web of Chaos thing as well, which is going to keep his listeners happy because they're probably all profiled in the bloody documentary anyway.
Maybe,
but it just seems like, someone's hit him up in chat and gone, well, I've got a juicy bit of information about David Farrier. He's done a movie about me, and I definitely don't have a conflict of interest of bringing this to your eyes. And I think if anything was offered up to like a serious journalist, they'd go, okay, well, I'll have a look at this, but also there's got to be what's the ulterior motive? What's the other way that this could blow up in my face as I continue to jam my reputation and career into a toilet every day, and just hammer the flush button? It just seems like he's getting taken.
Maybe.
By this guy.
Look, maybe, and I think that's no. Look, I think that's a fairly fair assertion to draw. I mean, it could be that looks like I can see how that would be drawn. Just to show again, because I didn't quite show it clearly. This is the part of the probably the salient part of this protection order. On application without notice, the court makes a temporary protection order against, this is obviously the family member's name that's been redacted, as the respondent. The court also directs that this order applies against David Andrew Farrier, the associated respondent. Now,
so I mean, I must admit that was something that I was just focusing on the David Farrier link, but yeah, I think you're right. This is a family matter that they have.
Well, Plunket said that, yeah.
Tacked Farrier onto.
I wrote it down as he said it.
Weird.
A relation of mine in cahoots with David Farrier. In other words, Chewy, I want to write a piece about a family member of mine that's quite derogatory, and you help me with it. So I'm the offender, and you're tagged into it. You know. So look, we don't know what it is, but it sounds like that's what it sounds like to me.
There's quotes in the trailer that obviously come from people that are close to this Mr. Organ guy. Yeah. So that could be family members very, very easily,
possibly,
that would not be happy about what's going on.
And the other thing is, I don't know the family court situation, but I don't know how easy it is to get in there and get a protection order. And again, I don't say this to defend David Farrier. I don't know, but I suspect in a situation, if anyone's ever been involved with that, you're welcome to message us anonymously, and we won't say your name. But I suspect that if someone says I'm in danger, for safety, the courts probably issue a temporary one quite quickly and quite unquote easily, because that's to err on the side of caution. So it will be interesting to see what happens. There's two other things. Let's do the first thing, which is David Farrier's response to this second round. So the first round was Sean Plunket saying these things and David Farrier saying, I'm being defamed. This is the second round of responses from that. And David's written another webworm, but it started off the other day where he said this on Twitter: one day back in New Zealand, it already feels like it already feels fucking unhinged. Here's more. And so he wrote a webworm. And the webworm, it says this: I actually think that David Farrier does kind of Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones a disservice here by comparing Plunket to them, because I think in his deepest, darkest dreams, he'd like to have that kind of quote unquote success. Anyway, we have a Tucker Carlson / Alex Jones-esque broadcaster here called Sean Plunket, who's engaging on some kind of Twitter rampage against me, and one that's quite serious and quite distressing. He's been posting a series of court documents that seem to indicate to his 15,000 followers, I've been committing acts of violence. Now, is it the full one? No, it's not the full one. That's just the headline. Maybe this is the other. Remember how I said I saw another one? So he's posted a couple of them, right? Plunket was unsuccessful. Part of the reason appeared to be an attempt to get a documentary about conspiracy theory culture that I was involved in pulled off. Yeah, Plunket was unsuccessful as Web of Chaos went to air, and it's available online now if you're in New Zealand or if you have a VPN. So that's where he's been at so far. And to respond, he said this: I took to Twitter. There you go. There's a new app, Twitter. If you leave Twitter because of Elon Musk charging you $8, you should go to Twitter. That makes perfect sense to me. Anyway, I took to Twitter to state the obvious. Oh, another thing from listening to the whole conversation with Sean Plunket, remember we do these things so you don't have to, is that he made some kind of assertion that David Farrier was scared and hiding in Los Angeles and wouldn't come back to New Zealand for fear of being served papers. And within about 24 days. Yeah, within about 48 hours, David Farrier was back in New Zealand. I'm assuming because that's when his flight was, not because he delayed it because of this. So anyway, This is what David Farrier says. I haven't seen any court document. Sorry, I haven't been served any court documents. All I have seen is pages of what looks like a family court document that Sean Plunket apparently has a copy of. I certainly haven't committed any family violence on anybody, so the situation is quite bizarre. Now, I would think that the document doesn't say he's committed any violence. It says that there's a protection order against a relation of mine for Mrs. Organ, and David Farrier is an associate of that person. That's the first thing it says. Now, I'm not even saying whether the court document is genuine. I'm saying whether the claim is genuine or not, whether the claim is genuine or not. I also tweeted this, says David Farrier. Although I hear there's a film opening on November 10th in cinemas up and down New Zealand, could be cool to watch it. Free tickets for Plunko? No, actually, fuck it. He can buy one. He goes on to say his thousands of online followers, many somewhat unhinged, really didn't care what I said and took Sean had stated as cold, hard fact. There's a bunch of messages going out there. I thought he was an aggressive, bullying, Ardenite asshole. Now we know it to be true. Farrier the fuckwit. Farrier is actually hiding in America at the moment, wanted on a serious criminal activity, according to Sean Plunket today. So that was all part of that. He won't come back to New Zealand. He goes on to say that Sean Plunket tweets, and a certain part of New Zealand population now thinks I am a wanted on a serious criminal activity. It's like all of New Zealand's worst people are assembling into a kind of lame suicide squad. But here is Destiny's Church, Hannah Tamaki joining in. Wow, I suppose David didn't realize things he had done and went into the closet wouldn't be exposed. Someone has brought it out into the open. Also, my phone number is now out there apparently, and he's put a tweet up here or a message up here that someone has just messaged him directly. David says, who is this? He says, would hate to say you'd probably stalk and then you'd need a restraining order. So people have found his phone number or it's been released or whatever. He finishes off to say, amongst other things, I'm considering the options right now, but I have a web event to put on tonight, which was last night, about mega churches. Proof enough that I'm in New Zealand, I think. And then there's a film to get out there. And as I try to convince people to see Mr. Organ, Black Panther 2 is out at the same time, so I have my work cut out for me. So that's the first part. So that's the response from David Farrier. The second part is this. As I just said earlier about what the laws around defamation are, if you have an honest held belief, it's very, 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 very difficult to be found whatever is guilty is of it. Sean Plunket with this temporary protection order, he's in the clear. Because there is no way, in my opinion, that a court is going to say it wasn't, he had court documents that pointed to a situation. Yes, he drew some, he drew down some conclusions from here. But the one thing I would say is, in my opinion, there are going to be no repercussions legally for Sean Plunket talking about this, because he's got documentation that's enabling him to say these things. Now, whether he had that documentation when he started this or whether he's come across them and it's saved his ass, I don't know. But I suspect with what the defamation laws are in New Zealand, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not in that world, but I do understand a little bit about defamation law. If you say, well, it's my honest held belief and this is why, and you produce 2 family court order protection notices, then I don't think any courtroom in New Zealand would convict you of any kind of defamation. So
I want it to happen though. I want something really bad to happen. Plunket.
But I don't know.
He's just going to tiptoe away and go, woohoo! I got away with it. My army of brainworms are just going to keep on saying stuff about David Farrier for fucking years to come.
Yeah. Look, I don't know, and I'm not saying that's the answer. I don't know if lawyers tell David Farrier that it's clear defamation, he should go for it. Then we will keep following it, and we will. We're keen to follow this up. But all I'm saying is, from the little that we have seen, and from what I know about how hard it is to prove defamation, I can't imagine, unless they're fake, unless they're fraudulent, unless a whole bunch of the information he's given out it's got nothing to do with a protection order, but other things as well. I would struggle to see how a court could say, well, that's his honest held belief based on the evidence he had in front of him. That's all though. Not saying that's not saying that's good or bad or indifferent. Just saying I think that's probably the reality is what I'm saying.
Another layer peeled off Plunket.
Of your shitty
what
onion.
does it reveal? More shit in the shit onion.
Do you want to put
God,
some
he's a
messages that have
terrible
been coming in?
person.
I noticed you've been marking a few. Is there anything we want to put out there?
I've got a comment from Ro here. Mr. Organ threatened David Farrier, didn't he? He's just exploiting the legal system. In America, they're called slap suits, and they're more about money.
Yeah, they have those in New Zealand as well. The former head of the Conservative Party, what was his name? The weird.
Oh yeah, creepy Mick lawsuit.
When you have money, you just sue people, and because at the very least, even if they're not,
it ties them up, it shuts them up for a bit.
Oh, and it costs them potentially tens of thousands of dollars that people don't have. So yeah, the slap suits are a real thing, and they happen in New Zealand as well.
And Free Soul here, it's a blatant attempt to shut down the movie by the organs, pure and simple. And I would agree with that.
Because
I want to go out and buy 2 tickets though, right?
Because I'm always careful with how I word things, primarily for defamation reasons. I would say this to that point. Put it back up again. I would say this to that. I can see how you draw that. I can see how you draw that conclusion, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was correct. But we don't know. But I mean, I would draw a similar conclusion, and but we don't know. So and I guess we will find out because this won't just be left alone. I mean, if there's a temporary protection order, and if, for example, someone had made a false complaint, that's probably like a criminal thing as well. You can't lie in a court setting, you know. And I'm sure that's probably, if that is the case, and as I said, we don't know, but if that is the case, that's probably the path for David to take, because that will then clear his name. And if someone's been making false allegations about him or against him, then that's the way to clear his name. I don't think that there'll be any recourse for Mr. Plunket reporting on a court document that he's been given by a source. But we'll see. Yeah, Colin Craig. Nick says Colin Craig. That was the guy.
No, I was just I'm sorry. I've got to do this every time Colin Craig is mentioned.
Before you do it, I'm picturing a field of flowers and Colin Craig lying down in it. Is that what you're going to show us?
Absolutely. Every time it's mentioned. Look, I don't make the rules. Come on, look at that. Look at those dreamy eyes.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And those wandering wandering hands. He says as a joke, not meaning it at all, because I've got no money for lawyers. All right. Let's unless there's anything else from you, Chewy, let's move on from that. But we'll keep people updated as to what's going on. So it seems like what's happening is, in my opinion, honest held belief, that Sean Plunket is milking. I mean, I think the conclusion you've drawn, Chewy, which is the conclusion that I've drawn as well, which you'd have to be a moron not to draw that conclusion. So if someone there still pushes through for it and then tries to use it to tarnish David Farrier, like when it seems so obvious, and I'm saying seems because we don't know, then it's just gross, you know. So what is it? Why is Sean Plunket going after David Farrier? What is it about David Farrier that, you know? Is it just simply because David Farrier is seen by Sean Plunket's audience as like that tweet or something, a Jacinderite and someone on the left, and so Plunket knows that if I go after him as well and try and smear him, that'll be good for this audience I'm trying my best to grift off? Or I don't know. It's like, I mean, he was doing things like calling him a so-called journalist. It's like, I mean, he is a journalist.
Like we commented that on last night, of like calling someone who is a journalist a so-called journalist makes no sense. Yeah. And I think he called him a self-styled filmmaker. The dude has actually made films. It's not
has product on Netflix as we speak. Yeah,
self-made filmmaker.
Yeah.
You know, it just makes no sense. And I don't know if this just speaks to how desperately low the stakes are for Plunket, with his little audience of some of the most deranged humans with an internet connection, and a big war chest of money sitting behind him that he doesn't really have to justify too much from the sounds of it, as long as no one swears too much. Yeah. Does this have anything to do with Farrier going after mega churches?
Yeah, interesting.
maybe it's not the first thing that we're looking at, which is the Mr. Organ film. Maybe it's some of the other things that Farrier has highlighted. So yeah, maybe there's a 5D chess game going on that we're just not part of.
Yeah, not smart enough to be part of that. Let's do this. I mean, Chewy, you know this. The National Party, famous for their concerns around climate issues, yeah? I mean, National Party has been famous for like putting climate first always. Like the National Party is on board with the emissions trading scheme, and they're on board with farmers not paying their fair share, but paying 5% of their fair share. They're on board, because climate is always number one in the books when it comes to national aid. You know that,
100%. Absolutely no irony in what you've said at all.
No. So, because what I'm saying, because it makes completely logical sense as to why the National Party is complaining that Jacinda Ardern is not going to the latest group of world leaders meeting about climate change, because they're so pro, getting climate stuff sorted out that they want the Prime Minister to be going,
look, Jacinda's leaving the country again in an aeroplane.
No. They want her there. Because they are so pro sorting out climate issues, they want her there. So let's have a look at the story about, I think it's called COP27.
The Prime Minister is being criticised for skipping the world's biggest climate talks, which start this weekend.
Climate Minister James Shaw is representing New Zealand at COP27 in Egypt, but questions are being asked about why Jacinda Ardern has never attended the event. Climate correspondent Isabel Ewing report.
But the good thing about that is, should National get in, right, should that happen next year, Christopher Luxon's attending every COP from then on in, 28, 29, 30. He's going to be at all of them because obviously National is pretty concerned that she's not going to be there.
Extreme weather records have been broken on every continent in the 12 months since world leaders last met for the UN's Global Climate Summit. And outside of the natural world, chaos too.
The whole world stage is very dangerous and people are highly distracted. So we've got a major war that's had huge economic and social effects. The world's still coping with COVID. We haven't seen strong leadership internationally from the wealthier countries.
The main purpose of COP, hosted by Egypt this year, is for world leaders to hold each other to account, especially critical now that the UN predicts the world will fail to meet its goal of limiting warming to 1.5 degrees.
It's hugely important. I mean, it's critically important.
There are long-standing issues.
So remember, when we say climate minister, what we're saying is the person who's been given responsibility in New Zealand to drive climate policy. That's the person that's going, but not the Prime Minister. And of course, National are so concerned about our climate that they think the Prime Minister should definitely be there. Like the person who's been given the job to drive climate policy, not good enough. The Prime Minister, with all that spare time, she is definitely the one that should be there, because National is so very, very concerned about climate and always have been, never deviated from that whatsoever. It almost feels like there's no need for the Greens to ever come into politics, because National has always been so concerned about climate, and because they have been so concerned about climate issues, they've just they've said, Jacinda, you have to go, because we need our Prime Minister there, because we're so concerned about getting New Zealand's message out there, because we're on board. We're on board.
Issues to resolve, like when and how rich countries will pay for the damage caused by their emissions to smaller nations who face deserting their homes due to rising oceans.
Small states and developing countries will be able to get their voices heard, and they will be pushing very hard for financial reparations.
British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has decided last minute to attend COP after sustained pressure. Joe Biden and Emmanuel Macron will be there too. China, Russia and Canada won't be though, and Jacinda Ardern, despite never having attended a COP as Prime Minister, is skipping this one too.
Normally she's pretty jolly quick to get on a plane to go to UN events. I can't understand why she doesn't want to.
National says that's because the government's struggling to get consensus on how to price farming emissions.
She's got nothing big to talk about at COP because actually the plan hasn't been put in place yet.
James Shaw says getting farmers to pay for emissions is a tough sell everywhere.
We can see how contentious it is here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. It is equally, if not more contentious in other countries around the world.
This is an opportunity to really explain to the world that this is something unique that New Zealand is doing.
Some seeing it as a missed opportunity to flaunt our leadership on emissions-friendly farming. The Prime Minister's office saying it's not routine for leaders to attend COP, and Jacinda Ardern's raised climate change issues on the global stage this year already. Isabel Ewing.
So, Chewy, you know, because National are so concerned that because, you know, the issues around farmers and stuff haven't been sorted out yet. And so, you know, that's why Jacinda can't go talk to world leaders, although there was that whole kind of, you know, UN thing a few weeks ago, you know, that thing. But because of that, she can't go because, you know, there's not enough lights and cameras perhaps for Jacinda this time around.
Look, there is something to criticise. It's Labor is not the government of transparency, but certainly National want to be the party of the government of transparency because they're so fucking transparent with this criticism. It's so stupid. If she leaves the country, she's bad. If she stays, she's bad.
Yeah,
you know, it's just like
it's almost like there's a narrative. It's almost like
no
there's a
point now
narrative they want to
farmers-
further, no matter what the issue is.
Yeah,
almost.
just into bed. You know, on one hand, our farmers shouldn't have to do this thing because we're a tiny part of the emission scheme. On the other hand, we should be on the world stage saying, you know, that we're culling our national cattle herd in half. It's just, I mean, people see through this, right?
No, but see, what I've just done is I've just decided to put up some disinformation because this actually says that Christopher Luxon has said that National expect companies to be cutting their emissions without help, and he reckons that businesses should be sort of left alone, that they look after it themselves.
Famously, that's worked all the way through history.
Yeah, but that's why this is disinformation, because you could never have someone who opposes the government supporting businesses to lower their emissions. You could never have that. That can't be right, because they're so concerned that the Prime Minister is not going to be at COP27 that this is obviously so what I was showing people is, you know, filthy disinformation put out there about Christopher Luxon, because he's obviously, his green credentials are obviously high, and it's completely about getting Jacinda in front of every climate change issue around the world, because it means so much to National. And so I'm sorry that I don't ever want to put out disinformation, but I just wanted to show you some filthy, because obviously he would never oppose, you know, government supporting businesses to lower their emissions, because that would be like hypocritical, and that's not going to happen. Yeah, no one's going to be hypocritical, surely.
Yeah. Look, I have my own views on COP quite apart from this. You know, I think it's a bunch of bullshit. I think it's you know, some of the countries that choose to go, it's just greenwashing, virtue signaling, whatever you want to call it, with no actual real concrete action. Everybody's on such a long timeline that it's not going to matter. But yeah, that's quite apart from the fact that National, as you said, total gear shift into the what is it, the blue-green, the teal party.
It's a reminder, as you talked about National there, reminded me of what we said about Cameron Slater last week, I think it was, where he put out a tweet that had a picture of Jacinda Ardern in the Air Force plane flying to Antarctica, and it was like, any chance for PR? And then within days, Christopher Luxon was in McDonald's serving people a literal PR episode, and Cameron Slater was like, I can't wait to see Jacinda serving fish and chips in Morrinsville. So, like, you know, as I said, it almost sounds like there's a narrative to get out there by some of these groups, including the National Party. And look, if we're fair, including Labor when they do it from their side, but in politics, in this instance, it's National for sure, that they're just, you know, it's like I've heard people say, commentators say about Three Waters. Three Waters is bad because people think Labor is bad. So Labor no good means Three Waters no good. And if that's the narrative people are going to have, then we're never going to have decent policy in this country. So there we go. Anything, any chats or anything to mention there?
Not
really. They're going
specifically, no.
Let's have a look at this. I want to play something else for you as well. We'll move on to one last story out of the US with the midterms coming up. We've got a few American commentators hopefully coming on board next week for some midterm conversations, which will be fun. Beto O'Rourke in Texas, I think is correct, is in Texas. And he's someone who's really stirred up things in Texas several times and got close several times to dislodging Republicans. I want to play you a 60-second clip about some of the people who have attended Beto O'Rourke town halls, because he seems to be turning a certain sector of the MAGAverse. But I'll play this for you first, then I've got some thoughts about this, because on one hand, I think brilliant. You know, if you can turn anyone away from QAnon, alt-right conspiracy theorists, that's great. However, I'll explain to you at the end of this why it also perturbs me just a little bit. So this clip starts off with two Texas ranchers who have voted for Trump in the past. Have a listen.
I voted for Donald Trump. I voted for Donald Trump. I've never voted for a Democrat before, and you're the first one I've ever voted for. And I'm so freaking pumped. So, thank you. Well, I guess today was the first time I've ever come to any rally whatsoever. I took my son to a Trump rally in Houston, Ted Cruz rally in Lubbock, Texas. So we were both married women previously, had kids with our ex-wives. Now we're two married men, ranchers in West Texas. We have 4 kids.
Just for people who are listening to the audio podcast, what you're listening to is two Texas ranchers who used to be married to women, who had kids with their women, who are now married to each other in a same-sex relationship. Just in case the audio version has missed that, I know you guys watching will have seen it very clearly because it's subtitled.
Kids between the two of us, and just the current state administration and state judicial system just doesn't protect our rights the way I feel it should.
Was talking earlier about equal treatment under the law for everybody. It's really got to be for everybody. I just want to make sure that everyone is treated the same in Texas, and we're not there yet, but we could get there. And I think this election can be part of it.
Abbott has just moved so far radically to the right. I just can't go to sleep at night voting for those type of beliefs. So we're both farmers and ranchers in the Texas Panhandle. We've voted nothing but Republican all of our lives.
So there you go. So actually, before I say anything, Chewy, would you like to comment on that? I mean, it's one example, but there's lots of examples. You know, there's that Beto town hall where he went, and you motherfucker, like from the front. It was a different vibe he's bringing. Do you want to speak to that at all? I'll offer some thoughts.
I like O'Rourke from what I've seen of him, and contesting Texas that's a big ask. It's a weird state politically, very, very conservative in parts, and then the metro areas like Austin and that sort of thing are very, very left. There's these islands of the urban areas tend to be very, very left. I think, you know, Ted Cruz has been atrocious. And I think there has to be a significant chunk of the Republican Party that is just looking at the rest of them going, this is nuts.
Yeah.
And if there can be that big swing, and I think that's why there's so much focus on what O'Rourke's doing in Texas. If a swing can happen in such a red state, it can happen anywhere. It just seems to be such a mountain to climb, though.
I'll tell you why it frustrates me. I mean, I think turning people away from MAGA is a good thing, right? But I'll tell you why it frustrates me. And, you know, people watching, and you truly know that I've had a lot of involvement with the church, right? And in that involvement, I've had a lot of pushback from people in the church with my views around the LGBT community as an ally. What typically happens in the church is there will be a parent or you know, someone, an older person who is completely anti a whole bunch of LGBT issues until they have a gay son or daughter.
Oh, yep.
Then all of a sudden everything changes and they see the light, pardon the pun, because they realize that this person is someone they love and there's nothing wrong with them. And, you know, that's what they are. The thing that really, I mean, I think turning people away from MAGA is a good thing, but the thing that frustrates me most about this is it appears that when they were living in a heterosexual relationship, they weren't because they were gay, but they were living with a man and a woman. They were like Republican all the way. This is the way to do things. And when they join a community, when they come out, and God bless them for doing that, right, and finding their authentic self, but it's when they come out and when they realize that their new community is now suffering at the hands of these fuckers, it's then that they start to go, we got to stop this, we got to stop this. And I'm infuriated by people who can't empathize and see the perspective from not them, right? When they were living in a husband-wife relationship with kids, they were like, Republican all the way. When they come out and they join the LGBT community, all of a sudden their eyes are open to this thing that's been around them all the fucking time, but they ignored it and refused to get involved with it and refused to fight on behalf of some vulnerable groups. So I'll be honest, love it that the MAGA has been turned away. Frustrated as fuck as the way they're turned away is actually not because of Beto. Ironically, it's because they're gay. And it's them coming out that'll be the thing that's turned them away from Trump, not Beto O'Rourke. He might be the catalyst to point them, but it's because they've joined a community and we're incapable this is how I'm reading it, and I am throwing some assertions out there, but it's very common. And I've had lots of experiences of this when I've been involved in the church world. It's basically selfish. It's like, oh, hang on, this affects me now. Oh, well, yeah, I better sort this out because this is not fair. So, well, it was not fair fucking 6 weeks ago, 6 months ago, 6 years ago either. But you just had a different cushy life and you wanted to, it's like Charles Barkley, the NBA player who voted for Obama. He tells a story about his mother, and Charles Barkley has told this story on a private phone call with me. No, not just kidding. He talks about his mother talking about who would vote for Republicans. And his mother's like, you vote Democrat, only rich people vote for Republicans. And Charles Barkley, former NBA player, ESPN analyst now, all these sorts of things, goes, but Mum, I am one of those rich people. And so it took him a step to move away from, because he was rich, he was voting Republican, to actually going, there's more. I have to look outside myself and figure out 100%. Why it's better. So I whilst I think great turning away from MAGA, great, Beto doing great work, the reason they're turning away is because it's now something else impacting them. And they didn't have the foresight to project and look at how this was, what they're seeing now for themselves was also impacting other people a few years ago. Sure, yours.
Yeah, look, I do struggle when people do vote for their self-interest or even against their self-interest, because a lot of people do that as well. Nobody puts themselves in other people's shoes when it comes to voting. Like I'm square in the middle. We say this all the time. I am, solidly white, middle class, heterosexual, all the major food groups. It isn't going to affect me massively whether the government is right or left, because they try to keep my group as happy as possible. But where I get really angry, and the reason that I vote for the things that I do, is the people that they are benefiting or the people that they are shitting on. That's generally why I won't vote for a right-wing party, because they tend to shit on people that don't need to be shit on, and they tend to give money to people that don't really need any more money. Is it a case with these ranchers that, they live in rural Texas and the only option that they would have ever considered is Republican, because all of their neighbors vote Republican, and all of their families always...
That's what straight white Christians in Texas do. We vote.
I never have to think. I walk into the polling booth, I hit the big R, and then I walk out again. And now they've had some sort of, pardon the phrase, but come to Jesus moment where they've gone, fuck, maybe I was wrong about everything.
Yeah. But it is incredibly frustrating. I
wonder if the evaluation is that deep, or whether it's what you're saying, which is like, the party that I used to vote for hates me. And now being honest about that, I need to look at someone else.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I just want to remind you of one thing. Now, you're talking about not voting, for the right or that kind of stuff as well, but you are quite a bit more authoritarian than I am. I just needed to remind you of that again, just to
I'm waiting for the hard right wing of the Green Party to just get its shit together.
Actually, speaking of this, if you don't know what this is about and you're joining us, me and Chewy did the political compass during the week. These are our results. So no one can ever accuse us of not being honest as to where our political bias is, because we've shown it to you. But also on our Facebook page, and it's scrolling at the bottom of the screen at the moment, we've put our ones up there, and we're inviting you guys to put your ones up there as well, to see if you want to, do your political compass. All the details are on the Facebook page. You should go check it out. Yeah, look, I mean, it feels a little bit almost like the conversation I had with Dane Gerard the other night, where his position about free speech was sort of, and I'm going to paraphrase badly, but I'll partner with anybody for the win. Whereas I'm like, there's far more nuance in this than that. And I want to go like, I want the ability to be able to understand what the other side thinks, and what, not even the other side, but other people within my own community that aren't me. Like you say, there's not too much that I'm going to suffer from at the hands of a governmental change. So we need to figure out, I kind of understand this idea that if everyone votes for their own self-interest, that's probably democracy on one level at its purest, because that's everyone voting for what's best. But then if you do that, every minority, and I'm not even meaning a particular minority, be it a race minority, be it a dog owner minority, whatever, they'll all get left behind. And we do have to figure out where we balance sort of what's best for the greater percentage of the population, and how not to leave behind and leave abused minorities as well. And that's the tightrope that we need to walk, where we go, sometimes doing what's best for the minority is the best thing to do, because that's the right thing to do.
It would be amazing if we could just, you have literally people talk about this all the time, one person, one vote. But we know that the scales are so heavily weighted because money is involved.
Yeah.
I saw National have a fundraising dinner coming up. It's $1,500 a ticket. So they did have a good deal for a table of 10 though. It's $1,500 a ticket times 10. So great discount there. That's the people that they talk to. They're not going to invite the poors to the table because there's no money in it. They're not the people that are voting for National, but there are always going to be people that are, again, they're voting against their self-interest. They're not the people that National are paying anything more than lip service to, but they will vote for National because they don't like something that Labor does. They don't like that it's a woman. They don't like too many brown faces in the neighborhood. They don't like the gays.
I think the best example,
there's a bunch of stuff.
The best example of that is the evangelical right? The Christian right. Really, there are lots of things that they will actually kind of be grey on, but the one they won't be is abortion. Yep. So actually, as soon as Trump says I'm pro-life, they'll be loving Luxon, who considers abortion to be akin to murder. And that's their issue. Now, yes, there are some other things as well, like what they claim family to be. Although when they claim family, even some who claim to be family first, it's ironic. It's always heterosexual families first that they're talking about. They don't actually ever really put in the effort or the hard yards for two lesbians raising kids, or a gay man raising kids. It's always about straight couples. That's their family. And they'll put out an argument that says this is the best way it's supposed to be designed, and whether that be true or not, and I don't believe it to be true, but whether it be true or not, it's not reality. The reality is there are all sorts of families out there. So what that comes back to is you can have different people thinking different things, but when it comes to abortion for the evangelical right, that's their issue. And that's the thing that ties them into those pro-lifers, especially in the American system. And really, that's why they can vote for an orangutan who will grab people by the pussy, who will sleep with a prostitute while his wife's pregnant, who will cheat, lie, and steal, who won't pay his bills, who won't release his taxes, because he used the words, I'm pro-life, and I like the Bible. That's it. There is Guy. No matter what, there is Guy.
I don't like money in politics, and I don't like religion in politics. If there was some way to get those two fucking things completely out of it, because the idea of a religious leader Like, I mean, it's a lot more in the forefront somewhere in the States or in the Middle East. Not so much here. But it's just like, can you put yourself up as a community leader when you have such prominent religious beliefs? Say you're an evangelical or whatever. You are leading a community that is comprised of people that don't believe the same things that you do.
Yeah.
So how can I trust someone that has these evangelical beliefs to lead the entire country and not just the people that agree with you?
Well, it's not even.
I can't get with that. And I would
worse than
include
that. It's worse than that. It's not even that you're going to lead some people that don't agree with you. If you look at the Roe versus Wade thing, 70% of the population don't agree with you. It's not just that there's 20. You have to. How do you represent the 30% that don't agree with you? It's like 70% of the country, 60% of Republicans that are polled don't agree with that. So it's not even so much how do you lead those ones that don't agree with you. It's like, how do you just overwhelm the majority of the country in such a heavy way?
Money. Yeah. Money. Those evangelical mega churches can just become a money pipe straight into your re-election campaign, and you nod and you say, yes, I will take the money. And what's important to you? Okay, cool. Good enough. Once I'm in, they can't get me out.
And they put in place justices in America in particular who are religious zealots. They like to kind of talk down places like Saudi Arabia with Sharia law or various religious police and that kind of stuff, but it's actually the same that they have in America. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene has said very clearly that the church needs to be instructing the government, and that the separation of church and state is nonsense. That the church should be instructing everyone. They say it bluntly now. Lauren Boebert, they say it, and they're getting re-elected. So it's they don't quite see it. I wrote a piece several years ago, and I coined the phrase Yaria law, and I talked about I think it was Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and about people who would refuse to authenticate same-sex marriage certificates in a county because it was against their religious beliefs. So the county clerk wouldn't stamp them. And it's like it's Yaria law. It's like Sharia law is to Muslim. Yaria law, which is a word I coined, is to Christians. It's basically using their religion to make laws of the land. How's that any different from in a Muslim country having to follow laws of the land, like covering your body or not drinking, whatever, because that's the laws of the religion? How's it any different? It's not. It's not. Anyway, that was a nice.
Well, that was quite the ranty tangent we both went on.
Yeah. Nick thinks it's Handmaid's Tale. Here we come. Maybe so. Stephen says single issue voters, nothing else matters except that one issue. Yep. And yeah, that's the abortion one. Nick also says, I used to rip off Family First bumper stickers at the supermarkets in Masterton. Masterton. I'm sure there was a lot of them there. All right. Hey, thanks for joining us tonight. Anything else you want to wrap up with, Chewy? We don't want to be too late for you because you're still in recovery mode.
Oh, fading fast. I'm all good. I've got some issues out. I'm so invested in watching Sean Plunket fuck this up. So bad. I want this to explode. Like The Office when that guy drops that big pot of chili. I want that for Sean Plunket, and the chili is this issue.
Let me
fuck her up so bad.
I want to ask a question of the people watching right now. Now, y'all know we've been doing this for about 8 months, and Chewy doesn't know what I'm about to ask you, so don't look too scared, Chewy. Y'all know we've been working at this and getting this, and we're really enjoying it. And look, thank you for supporting us and getting involved. I do think maybe in the not too distant future, maybe not pre-Christmas, but if we continue after Christmas, that's what we're hoping to do. We might drop to 4 days a week, just because we want to be the New Zealand's Jon Stewart who did the Daily Show Monday to Thursday. No, but there is a chance, and this is the question I want to ask people watching, because I'm invested in you and you are invested in us. Would you rather have it, if we went to 4 days, would you rather have it Monday to Thursday or Tuesday to Friday? So M to T or T to F. If we were if we were to drop to 4 days. Now, every month at the moment we're doing a Patreon supporters conversation. So if you're one of those people who wants to come along in a couple of weeks' time, because we'll do a November one, we'll ask you this question as well, because I'm interested in getting your feedback. But if you're watching right now, you're watching us on YouTube in particular, you can put in the chat right now, if it did go to 4 days, would you rather go Monday to Thursday, M to T, or Tuesday to Friday, T to F? Chris says, my first time listening to you guys. My first time listening to you guys, but good chat. Oh, kia ora, Chris. Well, how about you, Chris? You can be our deciding vote. Monday to Thursday or Tuesday to Friday. I do wonder what tends to happen with the audience is it tends to climb as we go through the week. So I quite like Friday to be the show, but I also think that we have regulars more Monday to Thursday, and Friday is the night people go out and do other things, and
not me. I never go out.
But what I was also thinking is we could do Monday to Thursday, and I could use Friday night as like specials. Like I do the other podcasts, I could do things. Yeah, Nick, thanks, mate. Wednesday's off. Good one. I thought about that as well. I don't want to give 5 options: Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Yeah. So there you go. Mick says might have to set some KPIs if you are going to 4 days a week. LOL.
Yeah.
Friday night used to be a night out.
There's got to be consequences.
Yeah, if Friday used to be a night out. Then Monday to Thursday work-life balance, guys. That's from Ro. Yep. The other thing is we could also turn Friday nights into a much more casual thing, like fire up Discord every Friday night and have people involved, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, I think Stephen's right. He's telling you to get out of here, Chewy. I think you're looking a bit glazed. And as we said last night, let's not have a 45-minute wrap-up. Let us know. Put it in the chat. I can see there's lots of comments coming in right now about Monday to Thursday or Tuesday to Friday. If you're listening to the audio podcast while you're doing it, especially if you're on Apple Podcasts, why don't you rate and review us? It's very helpful to the algorithm. Also join us on our Facebook page. Maybe I'll put this up there on our Facebook page over the weekend just to get a bit of feedback from people as well. Now, no decision's been made yet, but it's just something I've been thinking of, as we continue to try and nail this thing down. It might be a possibility in the future. All right. Go the All Blacks over the weekend with that sports ball, Chewy.
Sports ball.
And other than that, thanks for joining us again tonight. Paul says Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I can give these options. People are now giving us options that I didn't even offer. Sheesh. Bossy riches. Thanks for joining us tonight. We'll see you Monday night from 10 p.m. for another edition. Be safe through the weekend, and I will catch you on Monday. And Chewy, we will talk to you soon. You relax, Chewy. Have a few quiet ones. Take a relaxing weekend. And everyone be safe. We'll catch you next week. Hooroo.